Nobody tells you that after leaving a cult, the weirdest part isn't always only the trauma. It's realizing that you still say thank you to inanimate objects, as was the case in Scientology, the cult that I grew up in. Or you're asking for permission to go to the bathroom at work or looking for the bathroom sign in, sign out sheet. I spent 35 years in Scientology and somehow still needed a whole another decade plus to realize I'm allowed to say no. I'm allowed to take naps. I'm allowed to not have to explain my every move like I'm on trial. If you're newly out of a cult, high control group, religion, or even just a toxic mind space, buckle up because today I'm sharing the things I wish I could have told my former cult self. And you know her, the version of me who was deep in Scientology, questioning her sanity, but too afraid at the time to question the system. The one who thought she had to be perfect, compliant, and numb just to survive. First thing I would tell my former cult self is you won't always be the strangest person in the room. When I first left Scientology, I thought no one would ever understand me. Like I'd walk into a normal room and people would just feel the weird radiating off of me. It felt as if I had a neon sign above my head displaying every weird fact about my childhood, from my mom marrying my grandpa to signing a billion-year contract at 13 and then becoming a teenage bride when I should have been attending my high school prom. And look, I've got stories like multi lifetime on a space opera starship level stories. But here's what surprised me: a lot of people have been through stuff: grief, abuse, family dysfunction, addiction, chronic illness, you name it. And the more I talked to people, the more I realized I wasn't the only one navigating trauma or trying to rebuild a self from scratch. Sometimes I am the strangest person in the room, and now I'm proud of it. Because strange means I've survived something. I survived something difficult, something unusual. Strange means I have insight into high control groups because of my experience. And that's insight that not everybody has. And honestly, I think that's probably a good thing because that just means not everybody has been in a cult. But I am still frankly shocked by how many actually have, even if it wasn't a formal cult like Scientology. High control groups, high control situations can present in so many different ways. The second thing I tell my former cult self is you're allowed to make decisions for you. I wish I could have grabbed my cult self by the shoulders and said, you're allowed to make decisions that benefit you, even if it disappoints someone else. That's the tricky thing. And I don't think that's limited to people who grew up in a cult. I think even as parents, we face that on a regular basis. It's hard sometimes to make decisions for ourselves because we have a family to consider. We have so much more to consider. The difference between that and Scientology is for Scientology, it's always about what is the greatest good for Scientology. That is supposed to be the thing that you end up doing. But what I've learned over time is saying yes when you mean no is actually a betrayal of yourself. So set the boundary. Take the nap if you're into naps. I've actually never really been into naps. I have romanticized napping, but it's never been, maybe I just haven't mastered it yet. I feel like I'm not a napper. Anyways, but if I wanted to nap, I could. Quit the thing. Say the awkward truth. None of that means weaponizing our trauma or using it as a license for bad behavior today. You have the right to consider what is right for you and make decisions for yourself. The third thing I tell my former cult self is if you don't like how it's going, you can change it. You will be able to change it. In the cult, there's always this type of vibe of this is just how things are. Accept it, comply, don't rock the boat. If I wasn't accepting of any piece of technology, as Scientology calls it, by L. Ron Hubbard, it meant I had misunderstood words or was committing harmful acts against Scientology. And when I left, I realized, no, actually, I can rock the boat. I can flip my whole ship if I want to. In fact, I don't even need to be on a boat. You don't have to stay stuck. You don't have to keep relationships out of obligation. You are allowed to pivot, rebuild, start over as many times as it takes to find a life that feels like yours. You are allowed to make mistakes and try new things as you figure out life after a cult. Learn to appreciate and embrace those mistakes and learn from them. That's something that has really served me well, and that I still, honestly, I still struggle with that, probably because of my cult upbringing. But making mistakes is how we learn. But it seems like we have vilified that, oh, if you make a mistake, you're going to get called out for it. And people get so afraid to try new things, or so afraid of making mistakes, that they don't actually grow. People will try to guilt you back into who you were. Don't go. That version of yourself was surviving. This version, she is living. The fourth thing I would tell my former cult self: you'll grieve more than just the group. One thing no one told me: you're not just grieving the cult, you're grieving your old belief system, your community, your role, the you thought you had to be. And sometimes that grief sneaks up out of nowhere, like in a Target parking lot or while you're trying to cook quinoa. Let it come, let it move through, and that grief is part of your liberation. The fifth thing I would tell my former cult self is: you will find joy again. You will belly laugh. You will fall in love. You will eat mango mochi ice cream at 1 a.m. because you can. There will also be heartbreak, but that only comes when you have loved harder than you have culted. You missed out on a lot as a child because you were being a big being in a little body, handling responsibilities no child should be handling. Embrace play as an adult. When someone is forced to skip childhood, whether it due to cults, abuse, neglect, it shapes their entire adult identity. There can be emotional suppression, hyper independence. Experts often talk about how emotional suppression and hyper independence are trauma responses. If you grew up in an environment where expressing emotions wasn't safe, you learn to bottle everything up, power through, and handle everything alone. And this can look like struggling to ask for help, even when you're drowning, feeling guilty when resting or having fun, being praised for being mature as a kid, but feeling emotionally numb or detached as an adult. When a child is forced to take on adult roles, emotionally, physically, or both, this disrupts development and creates chronic guilt and people pleasing, a deep fear of being a burden, anxiety when you're not being useful to others. In cults, this is often exacerbated because the group sees children as little adults or spiritual beings with no need for emotional development. This creates a whole arrested development. Emotional development can get stuck at the age when trauma occurred. You might look grown on the outside, but inside, part of you still feels like that 10-year-old who never got to play, rest, or be comforted. Some adult signs of this are: you might feel extremely responsible, but low key resentful. You avoid fun or feel uncomfortable when others are carefree. You may seek out parent figures in partners or friendships. There might be shame around play or pleasure. Experts talk about how trauma disconnects us from our authentic selves, including joy, curiosity, and creativity. You might feel guilty for enjoying things too much. You might struggle to be spontaneous or silly. You might avoid hobbies unless they're productive. That's not a personality flaw. That's trauma in a fun costume. Play, do the things. Let go of the idea that you need to control everything or be an overachiever because you weren't allowed to just be. Your nervous system now clings to structure, control, and perfectionism to feel safe, and that's going to get better. But that control is usually about avoiding emotional pain, like fear of failure, which equals fear of punishment, fear of relaxing, which could equal fear of something going wrong, fear of rest, which can equal a fear of being perceived as lazy or bad. You will find your people, sometimes online, sometimes at work, sometimes in places that would have been off limits in your old cult life. And one day, out of nowhere, you'll notice a moment, a tree, a breeze, a conversation, and you'll feel this insane, overwhelming gratitude just to be alive and free. That's what keeps me going today. That's what tells me it was worth it. So, if you're somewhere in the just left stage, or maybe even just thinking about leaving a high control group or a life that isn't really yours, I want you to know your life isn't over. It's just starting and it's going to be so beautiful. Let me know in the comments, what would you tell your former self if you could go back? I'm Natalie Webster. This is Life After a Cult, and we're just getting started.